Have you ever wondered why life lets you fall? Why everything you once held begins to crumble? Why the faces you trusted turn away? Why the mask you wore begins to tear apart? Have you ever felt that your prayers echoed into silence? That your strength vanished in an instant? That the ground beneath you disappeared, and you became nothing but a shadow of yourself? What if I told you that this falling is not your failing, that this disappearance is not your death, that this silence is not abandonment, but the very hand of God breaking apart what was never truly yours, so that He may rebuild you into who you were always meant to be? This is not the end of you. This is the resurrection of you. Your fall is the fall of illusions. Your disappearance is the sanctuary of God's fire, and your rising is no longer you rising, but God Himself carrying you into the light. So breathe. Close your eyes even now. Let go of the noise. The world taught you to measure yourself by what you lost, but heaven is teaching you to measure yourself by what can never be taken away. This is the path of the chosen. This is the holy rhythm of resurrection, to fall, to vanish, and to rise again. And as you listen, I will walk with you through these stages in 7 chapters, through the darkness, the silence, the fire, and into the dawn where nothing can ever break you again. Because resurrection is not just about what happens after death. It is about what happens after you finally stop pretending, after you finally stop clinging, after you finally surrender, and allow God to burn away everything false, so that only truth remains. This is your resurrection story, and it begins now. Chapter 1. The Fall. When everything breaks apart, the shattering of illusions. There comes a time in every soul's journey when the walls you built begin to tremble. Not because you are weak, but because the foundation beneath them was never real. You thought you were secure. You thought you had a place. You thought the mask you wore was strong enough to carry you through life. But God, in His mercy, does not allow illusions to last forever. The friendships that fade, the plans that collapse, the identity that begins to slip through your fingers. These are not punishments. They are unveilings for the soul that longs for truth. There can be no permanent comfort in the false. So the false must fall. The fragile must break. The mask must shatter. And though it feels like death, it is in truth the beginning of life. Pause. Whisper slowly. Can you feel it? That trembling in your chest when you remember the moments that broke you? That storm in your mind when the world you built was stripped away? Yes, that was your fall, but it was never your failing. It was the hand of God, removing what could never carry the weight of eternity. When the world turns its back, there is a loneliness that only those chosen to rise can understand. When people you loved vanish, when voices you trusted grow silent, when eyes that once admired you look away, you begin to believe you are cursed. You begin to believe you are abandoned. But listen carefully. What feels like betrayal is often protection. What feels like rejection is often redirection. What feels like loss is often the carving away of what was never truly yours. The world does not see what God sees in you. And so, when the time comes for you to be reborn, He allows the world to turn its back, so you may finally turn your face toward Him. This is the paradox of falling, that in losing everything, you gain the one thing that cannot be lost. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Now ask yourself, who left you that you are still holding onto in your heart? What fell apart that you are still mourning in your soul? Can you see now that even the breaking, you are being carried the exhaustion of the soul. There's a fall deeper than failure. It is the fall of the weary soul. When the fight is too heavy, when the tears come without end, when your body is present, but your spirit feels gone. This exhaustion is not weakness. It is the moment your soul confesses, I cannot carry this anymore. And that confession is holy, because it is here, in your tiredness, that God begins his greatest work. The world praises the strong, the unbroken, the flawless. But heaven honors the broken, the weary, the surrendered. For only in surrender can grace enter, and only in emptiness can God fill you with himself. So do not despise your exhaustion. It is not the end of you. It is the clearing of the ground, the emptying of the vessel, the softening of the soil, so that new life may take root. The purpose in the fall. Every fall has a purpose, even the one you thought would destroy you. The fall is the undoing of false strength. The fall is the collapse of shallow foundations. The fall is the silence that reveals the voice of God. If you never fell, you would never question what you were standing on. If you never broke, you would never realize what could not be broken. If you never lost, you would never discover what cannot be taken away. So, beloved soul, understand this. Your fall was not a curse. Your fall was a summons, a divine invitation into the mystery of who you truly are. And though it hurt, though it tore you apart, though it made you believe you were finished, in truth, you were only beginning, because resurrection does not start in triumph. It begins in the ashes. It begins in the silence after the breaking. It begins when you finally stop running from the fall and allow it to teach you what only God can reveal. Take a moment now. Breathe. Let the memories of your own fall rise to the surface. The betrayals, the failures, the losses, the exhaustion. And now hear this truth whispered into your soul. Your falling was not your failing. It was God preparing you for what comes next. Because after every fall, there is a disappearance. And after every disappearance, there is a rising. This is the rhythm of resurrection. And you are in it now. Chapter 2, the disappearance. Into isolation and the voice of God, vanishing into silence. After the fall comes the silence. And silence can feel like death. You used to be surrounded by noise, by people, by plans, by the endless motion of life. But suddenly it is gone. The voices stop calling. The invitations no longer come. The stage you once stood on has gone dark. At first, you panic. You ask, where did everyone go? Why has the world forgotten me? But listen carefully. It is not the world that abandoned you. It is God who hid you. Think of Moses, once a prince of Egypt, robed in power and prestige. But when God was ready to prepare him, he vanished into the backside of the desert for 40 years. To Egypt, he had disappeared. But to God, he was being trained to hear the voice of the burning bush. Think of Elijah, the prophet who called fire down from heaven, yet soon after fled into the wilderness, fed only by ravens, hidden by a brook, until the still small voice came. Think of Jesus himself. Before his ministry shook the earth, he was led by the Spirit into the wilderness. No crowds, no applause, only silence, temptation, and God's voice sustaining him. So do not despise your disappearing. It is not abandonment. It is alignment. The world may no longer see you, but heaven knows exactly where you are. Close your eyes now. Imagine yourself hidden in the palm of God's hand, invisible to the world, yet seen fully by him. This silence you are in is not the end. It is your desert of preparation. the stripping away. Isolation is not just being alone, it is the tearing down of everything you thought defined you. The applause fades. The admiration is gone. The possessions slip away. The identities crumble. It hurts. Oh, how it hurts. But don't you see? It is not cruelty. It is cleansing. Think of Joseph, clothed in his father's robe of many colors, adored by his family, admired for his dreams. But the robe was stripped away. He was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, forgotten in prison. Joseph disappeared, but in the silence of that disappearance, God was removing the robe of man to clothe him in the authority of Egypt. Think of the potter with clay. The vessel cannot remain as it was. It must be broken down, crushed, reshaped. The potter's hands press hard, not to destroy, but to make the vessel fit to carry his glory. So, too, in your disappearance, you are being unmade, so that you may be remade. Ask yourself quietly, what roads have been stripped from me? What titles, what roles, what mass have I lost? And can I see now that they were never my true clothing? Meeting God in a hidden place. It is here in isolation that the voice of God becomes clear again. For when the noise is gone, when the distractions are silenced, when the world has let you go, there is only one who remains. And you begin to hear him, like Samuel, lying in the stillness of the temple at night, hearing his name called, not in thunder, not in spectacle, but in a whisper, Samuel, Samuel, like Elijah hiding in a cave, hearing the wind, the earthquake, the fire, yet realizing God was not in the noise, but in the still small voice. This is the gift of disappearance, the rediscovery of God's whisper. And when you finally hear it, you realize he never left. It was you who could not hear him over the clamor. And now that the world is quiet, you remember his voice again. Pause, breathe slowly, feel the silence around you. Now, in your heart, ask, "Speak, Lord, I am listening." And know this, if you are hidden, it is because God desires intimacy with you. He has not hidden you from blessing. He has hidden you for blessing. Purified by fire. Do not be surprised that the disappearing feels like fire. It is fire, but it is holy fire. The prophet spoke of it. Malachi chapter 3 verse 3. He will sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. Like a goldsmith, God places you in the furnace, not to destroy you, but to watch carefully until he can see his reflection in you. Every false attachment begins to burn away. Every false story begins to dissolve. Every lie you told yourself, every mask you wore, every chain you carried that was never yours to bear, it all falls into the flame, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace. You may feel the heat consuming everything, but look closer. There is a fourth man in the fire with you, and not a hair on your head will be harmed. For this fire does not consume you. It consumes what was never truly you, until all that remains is the soul God himself shaped in the beginning. Until all that remains is purity, humility, and the quiet glow of truth. So do not fear the fire. Do not resist the disappearing. For it is here that your resurrection is being prepared. Take another deep breath. Notice how quiet it feels within you right now. That quiet is not emptiness. That quiet is the womb of your rising. Remember Joseph in the prison, Moses in the desert, Elijah in the cave, Jesus in the wilderness. Every chosen one disappears before they rise. And so must you. When you feel unseen, when you feel forgotten, when you feel erased from the world's stage, Remember this. You are not abandoned. You are hidden in the palm of God, while He prepares you for the day of your unveiling. And when that day comes, the world will not see the same person who disappeared. They will see the one who has been reborn. Chapter 3. The Fire, Purification, and Surrender. Entering the furnace. After the fall, after the disappearance, comes the fire. It is not gentle. It is not comfortable, but it is necessary. The prophets knew this. Isaiah declared, "When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, and the flame shall not consume you." The fire is not to destroy you, but to reveal you. Like gold hidden in raw stone, you must pass through flame, so the impurities can melt away, and the true brilliance of your soul can shine. Do you remember Daniel's friends? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Thrown into the furnace for refusing to bow to the false gods of Babylon. The fire was 7 times hotter, yet they did not burn, and in the heart of the flames, a 4th man walked with them, the Son of God Himself. So when you feel the heat of life's trials, when you feel stripped bare, when every false support has burned away, do not fear. You are not alone. There is one walking with you in the fire. The refining of gold. The fire does what nothing else can. It purifies. Gold, in its raw state, is mixed with dirt, stone, and impurities. But when placed in the furnace, the heat separates what is false from what is true. The dross rises to the surface, and the refiner carefully removes it until only pure gold remains. So too with your soul. The fire exposes what you could not see before. It brings to the surface your fears, your ego, your pride, your wounds. But God is the refiner, and He does not walk away from the furnace. He watches, He waits, and He knows the process is complete. When He can see His reflection in you, close your eyes. Imagine your life placed gently into the hands of the refiner. Feel the heat of His fire, not as destruction, but as purification. Whisper in your soul, "Lord, remove what is not me, until only you remain." The pruning of the vine. Jesus said, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, He takes away, and every branch that does bear fruit, He prunes, that it may bear more fruit." The fire is pruning, the cutting away of what is unfruitful, the removal of what is no longer serving your soul. The pruning is painful. The shears cut deep. You wonder, why must I lose this? Why must I let go? But the gardener sees further than you. He knows what is weighing the branch. He knows what steals its strength. And in cutting it away, He makes room for new growth, for sweeter fruit, for abundance you could not carry before. So trust the shears, trust the pruning, for it is love that holds the gardener's hand. The potter in the clay. The fire is also the potter's kiln. The clay, shaped and molded by His hands, must be placed into the furnace, or else it remains fragile, unable to hold water, unable to endure. Jeremiah was sent to the potter's house, where he saw the vessel marred in the potter's hand. But the potter did not throw it away. He crushed it, reshaped it, and placed it again on the wheel. So too with you. The crushing you felt was not rejection. It was reshaping. The fire you feel now is not punishment. It is the kiln of permanence. It is God ensuring you will not crack. When He pours His Spirit into you, surrender in the fire. The fire is the place of surrender. Here you realize you cannot control it. You cannot shorten it. You cannot escape it. The only way through is surrender. Think of Abraham climbing Mount Moriah, carrying his beloved son Isaac, the promise he had waited decades for. And yet, at the altar, he raised the knife. Total surrender, total fire. And in that moment, God provided the ram. Because when the fire burns your attachments, it reveals the God who is your true source. This is the mystery. In the fire, you lose everything false, but you gain everything eternal. Take a breath. Feel the heat of your own trials, the weight of what you've lost, the pain of what you've surrendered. Now imagine this, a refiner standing over a furnace, watching you with careful eyes, never leaving, never turning away, waiting until his reflection shines in you. Imagine a gardener pruning your branches, cutting with precision, not to wound you, but to make you fruitful. Imagine a potter holding you, shaping you again, placing you in the fire, so that you may carry living water. And whisper this truth to yourself. I am not destroyed. I am being refined. Because after the fire comes transformation, and after transformation comes resurrection. Chapter 4. The voice, learning to hear God again. The silence that speaks. The world teaches you to fear silence. But in God's kingdom, silence is the classroom of the soul. In the fire, your complaints burn away. In the wilderness, your distractions faded. And in the disappearance, your masks were torn. Now, there is only silence, but it is not empty. It is filled with presence. Elijah knew this. On Mount Horeb, he waited for God, and there came a mighty wind, but God was not in the wind. Then came an earthquake, but God was not in the earthquake. Then came a fire, but God was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice. This is how God speaks, not always in thunder, not always in spectacle, but in the whisper that only silence can reveal. So close your eyes, breathe, listen. Do not fear the silence. It is God's first language, the call of Samuel. In the days of Samuel, the word of the Lord was rare. People no longer expected God to speak. But one night, as the boy lay in the temple, he heard his name, Samuel, Samuel. At first, he thought it was Eli. 3 times he mistook the voice. But Eli understood and said, if he calls you again, say, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. And so Samuel did, and the word of the Lord came to him. This is how the soul learns to hear again. At first, you mistake it. You think it is your own thoughts, your own imagination, or the voice of another. But as you grow still, as you learn to say, speak, Lord, your ear sharpens, your heart opens, and the voice becomes clear. The shepherd's voice. Jesus said, my sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. The sheep does not need to analyze the voice. It knows the shepherd by intimacy, not intellect, by relationship, not reasoning. So too with you. The voice of God is not discovered through striving, but through abiding, not through endless questioning, but through trust. The shepherd calls, sometimes gently, sometimes firmly, and when you follow, you find pastures of rest, waters of peace, and a table prepared even in the presence of enemies. So when you hear that whisper in your spirit, that quiet nudge, that holy stirring, do not dismiss it. It is your shepherd calling you home, the daily bread of his word. The voice of God is not only whisper, it is also word. In the wilderness, Israel was fed with manna from heaven. Each day, fresh bread fell, enough for that day alone. If they tried to store it, it spoiled, because God wanted them to learn dependence, daily trust, daily listening. So too with his word. Man shall not live by bread alone, Jesus said, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. The scriptures are not dead ink. They are living breath. Their spirit speaking even now. Each verse, a drop of manna, fresh, alive, nourishing your soul. So when you open the word, do not rush, do not skim. Pause, breathe, ask, Lord, feed me with today's manna. And the voice of God will rise from the page. Like bread for the hungry heart, the whisper within. The greatest mystery of the voice is this. It was never far. It was always within. Paul said, "Do you not know that you are God's temple, and that his Spirit dwells in you?" The voice you long for is not distant thunder. It is the Spirit within, whispering through your conscience, stirring through your desires, aligning your heart with his. This is why Jesus said, "The kingdom of God is within you." So lean inward. Listen, the voice is not gone. It is rising now from within the temple of your soul. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel the silence in the room around you. Now feel the stillness within your chest. That stillness is not empty. It is the dwelling place of God. The shepherd's whisper is there. The manna of his word is there. The still small voice of Elijah is there. The call of Samuel is there. And if you are quiet enough, surrendered enough, you will hear it even now. Whisper this prayer. Speak, Lord, your servant is listening. Because after you hear his voice, transformation begins. And after transformation comes resurrection. Chapter 5. The transformation. Ego death, soul rebirth, becoming new. The death of the old self. Every resurrection requires a death. Not always the death of the body, but the death of the ego, the false self you have carried, the identities the world has stitched upon you. Paul said it clearly, "I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me." This is not poetry, it is reality. The old self must be nailed to the cross. The pride, the striving, the hunger for validation, the fear, the anger, the bitterness, the masks, the titles, the illusions. They cannot survive resurrection. Think of Lazarus, 4 days in the tomb, wrapped in grave clothes, his body stinking of death. But when Jesus cried, "Lazarus, come forth," the man who was dead walked out. But notice he did not rise in his old clothes. Jesus commanded, "Unbind him and let him go." The grave clothes had to come off. So too with you. Your transformation requires not only leaving the tomb, but stripping away the garments of your old self. Only then can the new life breathe. Wrestling with God. Transformation is not gentle. It is a wrestling. Jacob knew this. All night, he wrestled with the angel of the Lord. And as dawn broke, he cried, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." He limped away from that encounter. But he also carried a new name, Israel. No longer the deceiver. Now, the one who wrestled with God and prevailed. This is the paradox of transformation. You do not walk away unscathed. Your limp becomes your testimony. Your wounds become your wisdom. Your scars become the places where God's light shines through. So when you wrestle in the night, when you struggle with surrender, when you feel torn between who you were and who you are becoming, do not let go. Hold on until the dawn, for you will walk away changed. From Saul to Paul. Perhaps the clearest image of transformation is Saul, the persecutor of the church, a man of violence, pride, and zeal without wisdom. On the road to Damascus, a blinding light struck him down. He fell to the ground, hearing a voice. "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" In that moment, the old Saul died, and from the ashes, Paul was born, no longer the enemy of Christ, but his chosen instrument. So too with you. Your transformation may feel like being struck down, blinded, confused, stripped of everything familiar. But it is not death, it is rebirth. The false identity crumbles, so the true calling may rise. And one day, the very thing you thought disqualified you will become the testimony that empowers you. The prodigal returns. Transformation is also the story of homecoming. A son once demanded his inheritance, ran to a far country, wasted it all on reckless living, and ended in hunger, feeding swine. But when he came to himself, he said, "I will arise and go to my father." And while he was still far off, his father ran to him, embraced him, and clothed him in new robes, placing a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet. This is the mercy of transformation. It is not only about your effort, but the embrace of a father who runs to meet you. You do not return as a servant. You rise again as a son. You rise again as a daughter. The seed must die. Jesus gave a parable of transformation in nature. Unless a seed falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. The seed looks small, insignificant, but inside is a forest waiting to emerge. The death of the seed is not destruction. It is the unlocking of hidden life. So too with you. The death of your ego is not your end. It is the planting of your soul in God's soil. And from that death, a life far greater, far richer, far more abundant will rise. Take a breath. Let your old self rise before your mind. The masks you wore, the titles you chased, the wounds you carried, the pride, the fear, the need for control. Now imagine laying it all on the altar. See it crucified with Christ. See the grave clothes falling from your body. See the limp of Jacob on your hip, a reminder that you wrestled and were transformed. See Saul struck down, only to rise again as Paul. See the Father running toward you, robe in hand, ring in hand, calling you son, calling you daughter, and whisper this truth. I'm not who I was. I am who God is making me. Because transformation is not an event. It is a resurrection unfolding within you. And once it begins, nothing can stop it. Chapter 6, The Rising, Divine Empowerment, Grace, and Light. The third day dawn. All of Scripture carries a rhythm. Death on the first day, silence on the second, and resurrection on the third. On the third day, Abraham saw Mount Moriah. On the third day, Jonah was released from the fish. On the third day, Christ rose from the grave. The third day is God's signature of renewal. When it seems all is lost, when the stone seals the tomb, when hope has fled, God writes resurrection into the story. So too with you. Your falling was day 1. Your disappearing was day 2. But day 3 is dawning, and the stone is rolling away. Israel at the sea. Think of Israel trapped at the Red Sea. Pharaoh behind them, the sea before them. No escape in sight. The people cried out in fear. But Moses raised his staff, and the waters split. A dry path opened where there was no path. This is rising. When your enemies close in, when your past chases you, when the obstacles tower before you, God parts the waters. He makes a way where there is no way. And when you cross through, your enemies cannot follow. The waters that sheltered you will swallow them. What once threatened your life becomes the grave of your bondage. Joseph from prison to palace. Joseph was betrayed by his brothers, thrown into a pit, sold as a slave, falsely accused, and forgotten in prison. But when God's time came, he was lifted from the dungeon and seated in the palace of Pharaoh. In one day, he shifted from prisoner to ruler, from forgotten to favored, from broken to blessed. This is rising. It does not always come slow. Sometimes God accelerates your story, moving you in a single breath, from ashes to beauty, from mourning to dancing. Esther's crown. Esther was hidden, an orphan in exile, a woman with no name among nations. But when the time came, she was lifted into the palace, crowned queen for such a time as this. Her hiddenness was not abandonment. It was preparation. So too with you. Your seasons of silence, your years of obscurity were not punishment. They were grooming you for the day of rising. The favor of God crowns you in his timing. Peter restored. Peter knew the shame of falling. He denied Christ 3 times, cursing, swearing, saying, "I do not know the man." When a rooster crowed, he wept bitterly. But after the resurrection, Jesus sought him out. 3 times he asked, "Peter, do you love me?" 3 denials met with 3 commissions. Feed my sheep. This is rising, not only lifted from obscurity, but restored from shame, not only forgiven, but entrusted with purpose. God does not waste your failures. He weaves them into your calling, the light that cannot be quenched. John wrote, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." The resurrection is not just event, it is essence. The risen life is light. It cannot be caged. It cannot be dimmed. It cannot be broken. When God raises you, it is not just you standing. It is his light burning through you, a flame the world cannot extinguish. Pause, breathe, feel the dawn breaking in your chest. The tomb is empty. The sea is parted. The palace gates are opening. The crown is being set upon your head. The shepherd is restoring you. Whisper this truth. I rise, not by my power, but by the hand of God. I rise clothed in grace. I rise crowned in mercy. I rise shining with his light. This is resurrection. This is your rising. And nothing can stop what God has lifted. Chapter 7. The Unstoppable Life. Walking in eternal victory. From shepherd to king. David's life was the pattern of the chosen. Forgotten in the fields. Rejected by his own brothers. Hunted by Saul like a fugitive. Yet the oil of God's anointing never dried from his head. And in the fullness of time, the shepherd became king. This is the unstoppable life. Man may reject you, but what God crowns cannot be uncrowned. The world may delay you, but cannot deny you. For when the Lord lifts you, no throne of man can stand against the throne he gives. Daniel among lions. Daniel's obedience led him to a den of lions. The mouths of beasts circled him. The stench of death clung to the air. But in the night, the angel of the Lord shut the lions' mouths, and Daniel walked out unharmed. This is the unstoppable life, not the absence of danger, but the presence of divine protection. For no weapon formed against you shall prosper. What should have devoured you becomes your testimony of preservation. Fire without burn. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused to bow to the golden image. They were cast into the furnace, 7 times hotter than before. But as the king peered inside, he trembled and said, "Did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire? But I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and the 4th is like the Son of God." This is the unstoppable life, not spared from fire, but sustained in it, not free of trial, but free in trial. For Christ himself walks with you in the flames. And when you emerge, the fire has burned only your chains. Your clothes do not smell of smoke. Your soul carries no scar. More than conquerors, Paul declared, in all these things we are more than conquerors, through him who loved us. Notice, not conquerors only, but more than conquerors. A conqueror fights to gain victory, but one who is more than fights from victory already won. This is the unstoppable life. You no longer strive for God's approval. You live from his embrace. You no longer fight for freedom. You walk in freedom already purchased at Calvary. Death is defeated. The grave is empty. Sin has lost its chains, and the Spirit of the living God breathes in you. Zion unshakable. The psalmist sang, "Those who trust in the Lord are like Mount Zion, which cannot be moved, but abides forever." This is the image of the unstoppable life. Not frantic, not tossed, not fragile, but grounded, unmovable, eternal. Winds may roar, floods may rise, enemies may surround, but the soul anchored in God stands unmoved, for it rests on the rock of ages, a foundation no storm can shatter, the eternal triumph. At the end of all things, John beheld the New Jerusalem, a city without night, where God himself is the light. No more tears, no more pain, no more death, only eternal victory. This is where the story leads. Every fall, every fire, every silence, every rising, every transformation, every act of surrender, all point here to the unstoppable life, not merely in time, but in eternity. Pause now, breathe deeply, feel the truth echo in your spirit. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not forgotten. You have fallen, but not failed. You have disappeared, but only to reappear in light. You have been refined in fire, but only to shine like gold. You have heard his whisper, and your soul has been transformed. Now you rise. Now you live unstoppable. Whisper this final prayer. I am more than a conqueror, not by my strength, but by the hand of God. I rise, I stand, I shine, forever unstoppable in his light. Amen.